First of all, let me wish you all a happy new year and a very prosperous, healthy 2020. My article over the weekend was called The Assassination, the Escalation of the Shadow War. The attack on Friday, authorized by President Donald Trump on Iran's now slain military commander Qasem Soleimani and the Iraqi militia leader Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis and others, was a major escalation in the Shadow War. Let me begin with a selection of comments. The New York Times' Rukmini Callimachi wrote, "The evidence suggesting there was to be an imminent attack on American targets is razor thin, and that Trump was presented a menu of options for how to retaliate. Killing Soleimani was the far-out option. This is more than just bloodying Iran's nose," said Stephen Innes, chief market strategist at Axie Trader Limited, in a note. "This is an aggressive show of force and an outright provocation that could trigger another Middle East war. This is a seismic event in the region," said Jason Bordoff of Columbia University. "This is how the US-Iran tit-for-tat spirals out of control. Iran's response will be severe and deadly, and certainly may include escalating attacks on energy infrastructure. Vali Nasser, a response will have to come, as this is nothing short of a declaration of war to a cornered country that has increasingly less to lose. The risks of miscalculation are at an all-time high." I worked the Iran account for years at the NSC under two presidents. I'm honestly terrified right now that we don't have a functioning national security process to evaluate options and prepare for contingencies, said Kelly Magsamen. The crisis group's Robert Malley told the New York Times, "Whether President Trump intended it or not, it is, for all practical purposes, a declaration of war." The truth is that General Soleimani, along with Christian Russia and the courageous Syrian people, kept 3.5 million Christians in Syria from being slaughtered by ISIS and Al-Qaeda. That's Dr. David Duke. Qasem Soleimani was an iconic figure known as the Commander of Hearts and Suleiman the Magnificent, a reader of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and of course the leader of the Iran Quds Force, whom a former CIA officer called the most powerful operative in the Middle East today. That's the New Yorker Dexter Filkins. When Soleimani appears in public, often to speak at veterans' events or to meet with Khamenei, he carries himself inconspicuously, rarely raises his voice, exhibiting a trait that Arabs called kilib, or understated charisma. He is so short, but he has this presence. A former senior Iraqi official told me there will be 10 people in a room, and when Soleimani walks in, he doesn't come and sit with you. He sits over there on the other side of the room by himself in a very quiet way, doesn't speak, doesn't comment, just sits and listens. And so, of course, everyone is thinking only about him. "When I see the children of martyrs, I want to smell their scent and I lose myself." It was Soleimani who led the fight against Saddam. As Revolutionary Guard commanders, he belonged to a small fraternity formed during the Sacred Defense the name given to the Iran-Iraq War, which lasted from 1980 to 1988 and left as many as 1 million people dead. This is the dashed Abbas Road, Soleimani said, pointing into the valley below. This area stood between us and the enemy. Later, Soleimani and the group stand on the banks of a creek where he reads aloud the names of fallen Iranian soldiers. His voice trembling with emotion. During a break, he speaks with an interviewer and describes the fighting in near mystical terms. The battlefield is mankind's lost paradise, the paradise in which morality and human conduct are at their highest, he says. One type of paradise that men imagine is about streams, beautiful maidens, and lush landscape, but there is another kind of paradise, the battlefield. The front, he said, was the lost paradise of the human beings. The supreme leader, who usually reserves his highest praise for fallen soldiers, has referred to Soleimani as a living martyr of the revolution. In the end, he drank the sweet syrup of martyrdom. Qasem Soleimani resisted Saddam Hussein, he resisted the Taliban, he resisted IS, and all that is left of him is his ring. His assassination is peak Netanyahu, Pompeo, Maryam Rajavi, Saudi, cut off the head of the snake, made on the fly, rogue wag the dog foreign policy. We are now in an unfathomable and entirely unpredictable and non-linear phase. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei vowed that severe retaliation awaits the killers of Soleimani. At the beginning of the film From Russia with Love, the movie, not the book, Kronstein is summoned to Blofeld's lair to discuss the plot to steal the super-secret Lector decoder and kill Bond. Kronstein outlines to Blofeld his plan. Blofeld, read Trump. Kronstein, you are sure this plan is foolproof? Kronstein, read Pompeo. Yes, it is, because I've anticipated every possible variation of counter-move. Let me predict some counter-moves. Pompeo tweeted a photo of about 20 Iraqis, I joke not. Iraqis dancing in the street for freedom, thankful that General Soleimani is no more, he wrote. I responded by asking, are you prepared for 1 million Iraqis at the embassy in Baghdad this Friday? What happens if Ayatollah Sistani issues a fatwa asking US troops to leave? So the first prediction is that the US-Iraq misadventure is now over. The only open question is around the timing. The dogs of war is a phrase spoken by Mark Antony in Act 3, Scene 1 of William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. The Iranians kept their allies from Yemen to Lebanon to the eastern province in Saudi Arabia to Bahrain and all points in between on a leash. President Trump released that leash. Brent futures rose 3.5% on Friday and have risen more and crossed $70 a barrel as of today. And this is the highest since the attacks on Saudi Arabia's oil facilities in September. WTI also rose and continued to rise today. The strike escalates an already tense three-way situation between the US, Iran and Iraq. The two Middle East countries combined pumped more than 6.7 million barrels a day of oil last month, according to Bloomberg, more than 1/5 of OPEC output. Exports from both countries rely on the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow and crucial oil and natural gas shipping choke point. I expect oil to come off the boil this week because Iran will not react immediately. But the spike risk will remain sky high, and the price will spike when the counter move is made. This is an Archduke Franz Ferdinand moment. Archduke Franz Ferdinand Karl Ludwig Joseph Maria of Austria was the heir presumptive to the throne of Austria-Hungary. His assassination in Sarajevo is considered the most immediate cause of World War I. And a few further points. This is Soleimani's body, which when it arrived in Avaz in southwestern Iran, that's from Sina Tusi. This is an aerial view of tens of thousands of mourners at Soleimani's funeral in Avaz, Iran. That's from Joyce Karam. This is short footage of Qasem Soleimani, the reverence with which he was held, which I think people simply don't understand. This is from Qassem Soleimani. This is the ring, which was all that was left of the body. This is the tweet from Secretary Pompeo: Iraqis dancing in the street for freedom, thankful that General Soleimani is no more. To the point that I was making, are you prepared for 1 million Iraqis to march on the embassy? The US military warns anyone who attempts to overrun the Iraqi embassy will run into a buzzsaw. The problem with that is, how many people do you shoot dead before it tips once and for all? How long before Sistani issues a fatwa asking US troops to leave? David Duke, whose tweet said the truth is that General Soleimani, along with Christian Russia and the courageous Syrian people, kept 3.5 million Christians in Syria from being slaughtered by IS and Al-Qaeda, which is a valid point. There's a short link with Christian leaders praying over President Trump during the launch of the Evangelicals for Trump coalition in Miami, Florida. He was known as the Commander of Hearts, Suleiman the Magnificent. As I said, Brent futures rose 3.5% on Friday and then have risen more than 2% today. Some tweets from Ali Vaiz, whom I referenced in the article. The New Yorker says the killing of Soleimani is tantamount to an act of war. The article I was referencing, which is in the New Yorker by Dexter Filkins, in which a former CIA officer called Soleimani the most powerful operative in the Middle East today. This is a crowd in the Tehran metro ahead of Soleimani's funeral procession, chanting "No compromise, no surrender, revenge, revenge." Sina Tusi again. 25th of November, I was talking about Trump as being a big proponent of coercive financial, currency and sanction warfare, and his policy of maximum pressure on Iran is that policy's apogee, and he's probably calculating that they are now completely on the ropes and this would be a knockout blow. Maryam Rajavi, who tweeted the whole issue is that the Valiat-e-Faqih regime is on its last leg. In that article I was saying the alliance of Pompeo, the MAGA tweet army, Maryam Rajavi, MEK, I should add Netanyahu and the Saudi Arabians is just not credible, it's incredible. And I also said the nature of hybrid warfare indicates the direction of travel is an implosion which will engender catastrophic consequences which will be impossible to manage and will surely imperil Arab NATO itself. 13th of May, I described Iran as being at the Hunter S. Thompsonian edge. There is no honest way to explain it because the only people who really know where it is are the ones who have gone over. I also was saying if the US thinks Tehran will just roll over which appears to be the case, then they're exhibiting the same deluded ideas that they exhibited a day before the peacock throne got plucked. This is a Brent crude chart from Birdie Word, and rather presciently on the 31st of December, I tweeted conviction trade oil, which was then at $60.98 buy. I didn't expect all of this, but I was just bullish. Thank you for listening.